So I have done a few videos on Bryan Mbeumo's potential transfer to Manchester United, one being an individual analysis and the other being a comparison against Ryan Cherki. I'll leave both linked in the eye above. But whilst I do really like Mbeumo as a player and would be happy for United to sign him, the price tag is an issue for me. Technically he does have 1 year left on his contract, but there is a club option for Brentford to extend it by a year, and so it's basically 2 years, so you're not going to get him on the cheap. If he had 1 year left on his contract, the price would likely be somewhere between 30 to a maximum of maybe 35 or 40 million pounds, depending on the interest from other clubs, and at that price I do think he would be worth it. But with Brentford reportedly demanding around 50 to maybe 60 million pounds, I do have a bit of hesitancy, especially after I released my Football Manager rebuild video, which once again will be linked in the eye above, where after going through all the players sold and bought, we did have quite a bit of money left over that really couldn't be spent on more signings and only really upgrading the signings I'd already suggested. And so in this video I'm going to be doing an analysis on whether, if possible, would United be better off signing Mbeumo for say between 50 to 60 million pounds with add-ons, or paying maybe 20 to 25% more for a player like Rafael Leao for example, analysing the question from both the short and long term, a statistical perspective, as well as looking at how Leao could form an incredible partnership with one of the other players that I have suggested United sign. But before I go any further, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, including this 2006-2007 white Manchester United away shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which they did actually send me, as well as this Juventus Zidane shirt from the 90s as well, which are two jerseys that I have been wanting for quite a while, but were incredibly hard to find. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. So let's start off by going through the advantages and disadvantages with signing both players. So the advantages of signing Mbeumo is that he's Premier League proven, both in terms of his overall performance level, but specifically his goal scoring, hitting 0.28 non-penalty goals in the Premier League last season, ranking in the 68th percentile, which has increased significantly this season to 0.4 per 90, ranking in the 90th percentile when compared against all other wingers and attacking midfielders in the Premier League. Age-wise he's also perfect, 26 in August, although Rafael Leao is also 26 this summer as well, so I guess that kind of cancels it out. But also Mbeumo's skill set is perfectly suited to playing on the right of a narrow front three, able to receive the ball to feet in central areas between the lines or out wide, and kind of like a centre forward he's able to use his physicality to hold off the pressure of a defender behind and the ball control to either link play or swivel and turn out of the pressure, whilst also having the pace and movement in behind the back line to make those darting runs between the opposition's fullback and centre back, allowing him to get into 1v1 goal scoring positions as we've seen from Garnacho this season, with his disallowed goal in the first leg against Athletic Bilbao in the semi-final being a perfect example of this. But Mbeumo is equally as comfortable when it comes to drifting out wide, standing up the fullback before then looking for a forward pass infield or ahead to find an over or underlapping run. But also, having played in Thomas Frank's Brentford side over the past few seasons, he's developed a high level of tactical and positional understanding, switching between back 5 and back 4 systems, slotting into different roles on that right side of the attack, and when you look at the defensive section of his FB ref report, you can see that the percentage of dribblers that he's tackled is actually very impressive. Now in terms of disadvantages, I would say that for that sort of price, over £50 million at this point in his career, I am sceptical as to whether his potential ceiling is high enough in order to warrant such a big fee. In short, I'd sum it up like this: I think the risk of being underwhelming is fairly low when signing Mbeumo, but to me from the eye test and statistically, I think the probability of him developing further and going on to be one of the best inside forwards in world football is also quite low, given his chance creation, progressive passing and especially his ball carrying and dribbling metrics not being as impressive as what we see statistically with his goal scoring. Even though, to be fair, his XG assisted is still fairly high, but even from the eye test I don't think his playmaking ability is on that same level, and overall I just don't get as excited about his signing as I do with Rafael Leao. Now with Leao, the first disadvantage is that he would be significantly harder and more expensive to sign than Mbeumo. First of all, Milan reportedly want around £84 million for him, with clubs like Arsenal, Bayern Munich and Chelsea also taking an interest. Secondly, for that sort of fee, you'd have to say that his inconsistency over the past few seasons is a bit of a concern, as he has been criticised in Italy for drifting through games, and defensively he isn't someone who's going to produce the sort of positional discipline, work rate and the overall defensive output of Mbeumo, and with his preferred position being from the left, playing the role of an inside forward, it would mean that you'd have to shift Cunha to the right side rather than his preferred left, which I don't think is a massive issue if you are bringing in someone who's at the elite or even world class level, because I do still think Cunha can function pretty well from the right side of the front three as well. And so you could argue that it may be worth it, as Leao does have a lot of advantages. First of all, whilst on first glance his goal contributions over the past few seasons don't initially strike you as a potential Ballon d'Or winner, or maybe even the output that you'd expect from a £80 million plus forward, scoring 12 goals and assisting 13 in 50 games this season, 15 and 14 in 47 games last season, and 16 goals and 15 assists in 48 games in 22-23. However, if you compare it to Vinicius Junior's goal contributions over the past few seasons, and also factor in that he's playing for Real Madrid and Leao's playing for AC Milan, Leao isn't actually that far behind, showing that the Messi-Ronaldo era has skewed our perception regarding goal-scoring numbers from what you would consider wide or maybe inside forwards. But when you do look at Rafael Leao's per 90 metrics in his FB Ref report, however, they do look quite impressive. 0.32 non-penalty goals over the past 365 days, ranking around the 70th percentile when compared against all other attacking midfielders and wingers in Europe's top 5 leagues, and also ranking around that percentile for his non-penalty XG as well. 85th for his XG assisted, around the 75th for his expected assists and key passes, and especially for his dribbling and ball carrying metrics, you can see that he would offer something that Mbeumo can't, which is an abundance of pace and power when carrying the ball into space, ranking around the 90th percentile for his carries into the final third and penalty area, with his intricate ball control and quick footwork also making him a 1v1 specialist, as seen by him ranking in the 95th percentile for his successful take-ons, and the 83rd for the percentage of take-ons he completes. And that is probably the main advantage of going with someone like Leao over Mbeumo. Defensively, Mbeumo certainly is the better option, but given that Amorim's system uses a narrow front three, where the two interior forwards have greater defensive security behind them than they otherwise would in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 or really any 4 at the back system, Leao's significantly better ball carrying and dribbling could be of greater use. Now don't get me wrong, Mbeumo still has the ability to drive the ball forward through the space in the middle and final thirds at pace, as well as being able to beat his man in a 1v1. However, as his FB Ref report from the past 365 days shows, he is a level or two below what Rafael Leao can offer in that regard. And also from the eye test you can see that Leao has that added bit of creativity and flair, being able to go past a defender or perform a piece of trickery that can completely unlock a defence in a way that other top level wide attackers, including Mbeumo, can't do to the same level. Whilst you could say that given that Mbeumo is playing in the Premier League for Brentford and Leao in Serie A for Milan, that you'd expect Mbeumo to close that output gap if he was to make a move to Manchester United when it comes to his chance creation and ball progression. I think you could also make the opposite case that Mbeumo's goal scoring output may actually fall at United, not just in terms of overall goals if he isn't on penalties, but also because when he's playing at Brentford he's playing in a side that is controlling and being the protagonist in the game far less often than Manchester United will experience next season, and so therefore the space that he has to run into from the middle to the final third is not going to be there as frequently, because he's going to come up against deep and compact defensive blocks far more often. And this is where I think Leao makes a case for being worth maybe £20 to £25 million more than Mbeumo, as if Mbeumo's goal scoring output was to decrease by say 20%, which likely wouldn't happen at United, but it definitely could, his overall output and performance level as a whole would drop significantly more than Rafael Leao's if the same thing happened to him, due to Leao's skill set being far more complete and him offering a lot more in terms of his ball carrying and dribbling. And also when I look at Leao, I do see Ballon d'Or level potential, and whilst he hasn't shown the level of consistency over the past few seasons to be considered this sort of level on current ability, he is only 25, and when you factor in his skill set, how unique he is as a player, and his ability to perform a piece of magic to win a big game on his own, If he is able to improve his mental attributes like his decision making and decisiveness, alongside becoming more consistent over the course of a full season, which you imagine would happen as he approaches his peak ages in his late 20s, I do think he could get to the level of the likes of Alexander Isak, Vinicius Jr., Florian Wirtz, Jamal Musiala and maybe even Lamine Yamal. And so when looking at the potential of both players for the long term, you can definitely understand why Leao is valued at 84 million and Mbeumo around 25 to 30 million pounds less. And that's because whilst both players are fairly similar in terms of his current ability, goal scoring output, as well as his age profile, Leao's more complete and unique skill set does lead me to thinking that over the next 2 to 5 years, whilst Mbeumo could develop into one of the best inside forwards in the Premier League, Leao has the potential to develop into one of the best players in the world outright. See, I do like Mbeumo and he does have the factor of being Premier League proven, but I often think that the issue that United have had over the years is that we've not wanted to go near the 70 to 80 million pound mark for the truly elite level players after being burnt with the likes of Antony and Maguire, who were never really worth that in the first place anyway, and instead have ended up paying between 40 to 60 million pounds for players who aren't significantly better than the players we could have got for maybe 15 to 20 million pounds cheaper. See, as I've said in some of my previous videos, Cherki would have been my priority over Mbeumo, but with City likely to beat us to his signing, I'm still on the fence about jumping 30 million pounds to Mbeumo. Leao I think we could probably get for around 75 million with add-ons on top, and Mbeumo for about 50 million pounds plus add-ons as well. And given that if we sell the likes of Bruno, Garnacho and others, as I showed in the Football Manager videos, which I'll leave linked on the end screen after the video, we should have a fair bit of money to spend on the front line, especially considering we probably aren't going to be spending around 60 million on either Gyökeres or Osimhen. I am now being tempted by the thought of Leao and Cunha in the front line compared with Cunha and Mbeumo. Now I am going to do a separate video which should be out either later today or probably tomorrow, analysing the tactical impact of Leao in Amorim's 3-4-3, specifically looking at his partnership with another one of my suggestions. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and just check the channel in general for that video, but let me know what you think of Leao or Mbeumo. Would you pay £25 million more for Leao? And if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount. I'll leave it linked in the description and comment section below. And if you want to sign up to my Patreon to get access to the group chat on Instagram or read any of my articles, I'll leave it linked on the end screen now as well.